Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to a quick video, and this one is not necessarily going to be related to EVE Online. It's also going to be a bit of a rambling video, so the closure of Dust 514 and the announcement that CCP is planning to develop like a shooter for the PC. It made me think a lot about this topic, and what I want to share with you guys in this video is like my alternative plan for a possible Legion development. So I'm calling it Legion. I know it's gonna have a different name, but you know, that's why we get to go on at the moment. So I'm gonna call it Project Legion. All of this is going to be like wishful thinking on my part and just straight up speculation. So it's really rambling, and you're warned about that. But let us talk a little bit about what's happening here. So if we go to the Dust 514 website, we know that this game is going to close at the end of May, and we also know that CCP is developing a shooter based on Dust 514 and all the technology and the lessons that they've learned here, but for the PC platform. And a lot of people, myself included, are really excited about that. We can't wait to actually play a shooter on PC in the EVE universe. But what is it that most people, at least from what I've read and from my own perspective, actually would like to see with this Project Legion, or Unknown Project, whatever you want to call it? It is basically a shooter that is set in a true sandbox, just like EVE Online is a true sandbox. And I think the easiest thing to compare it to would be PlanetSide 2, but with base and vehicle building and manufacturing that is truly in the hands of players. So like a real sandbox experience when it comes to constructing things, and then have everything be destroyable, truly conquerable places and things like that. I think that is what most people would like to see Project Legion become. But I see one really big problem when it comes to that, and that is that such a game, such a project is an absolutely massive undertaking. It's going to cost a huge amount of development time. Even with the basis of Dust 514, I don't see CCP being able to make this in like 2 years. You know, I really don't think that that's in the cards. And so from that perspective, I think that just the sheer scope of such a game, of such a project, is going to be a bit of a problem. And so what I've been thinking about is, what could we see that CCP might actually try to do to eventually get to a game like that? Because if you look at the new games that they've been developing, Valkyrie, Gunjack, those are much smaller projects. If you look at the way they've been developing EVE Online at the moment with monthly releases, and now after a few years finally a bigger expansion, but even this expansion is more of a core project on which they can then build and iterate further on. So they're going to release citadels in the next expansion, but in the months and possibly years following that, they're actually going to develop more new structures that are going to basically expand on the citadel premise, which I think is really cool. But it also, I think, means that it is unlikely that the Legion project is going to be a straight up massive multiplayer shooter sandbox experience where everyone will have what they expect from the game. And that is probably the biggest danger. CCP already said that we should keep a close eye on FanFest when it comes to this unnamed project, but you definitely don't want to overhype yourself, because it's probably not going to be what we would all love Project Legion to actually be. And so what would be possible for CCP to do in order to actually get there? And I think it could be really cool, and some things I think are definitely doable. So I would actually start with not a completely new game, but this baby right here, Walking in Station. And I think it was 2 FanFests ago, CCP actually said that what they would like to see, or a vision that they have for the future, is where the EVE Online launcher actually becomes a portal to separate games, and you could use your character from EVE Online, your Capsuleer, as your character in a Project Legion, in Valkyrie, in whatever you want, and you could just switch that out. And so the way I see that they could get started on this is to make true on one of these small ideas that have been floating around on the forums and let's see if I can't sit back here, and that would be to have a sort of a station walking gameplay, but in wormhole space, in sleeper facilities, where the players would basically have a little bit of a shooter survival game. So as a capsuleer, you would be able to dock on a sleeper structure. You would get out of your pod, don like a dust suit, get a weapon, and then you'd have to hack your way through there. You could possibly have sleeper, drone, rogue drone, NPCs, whatever else attack you as a PvE environment. And of course, that would be easy to integrate as well in a sandbox experience, because other capsuleers could also dock. They could then start to hunt you down, and you know, a lot of things could happen there. Where the funnest example, of course, was that someone could actually blow up your ship, and then you would be forced to eat a bullet to wake up in a station once again. I think that something like that is actually manageable in scope, because it's basically a bit of a survival game that doesn't require huge infrastructure. It probably doesn't require that much server capacity and things like that. It would just be an opt-in feature, something that they could add to EVE Online, and to have the first steps happen towards like walking in stations, but just straight up make that a bit of a shooter experience, hunting for drifter or sleeper relics, stuff like that in wormhole space. Next to that, of course, they would need to come out with a new game for PC, and let's say that Legion would not be as big in scope straight away, but you could have the Dust Mercs basically gain the ability to use jump clones in wormhole space. We already know that for capsuleers with citadels this will be possible. Not sure how they're going to explain that lore-wise, but let's say that the Dust Mercs could become active in wormhole space, and you could have that game take place as Legion Mercs attacking drifter or sleeper facilities on the planets in wormhole space. You could have very limited base building, vehicle building there at first. It could be really enclosed and manageable, because you keep everything to wormhole space. You could have really interesting PvE, I think, with drifters, with sleepers, with rogue drones, whatever else you want to throw in that story. It could be pretty interesting, and of course, you know, alliances of these Legion Mercs could also, of course, try to conquer from one another, trying to extract valuable resources from the sleepers and the drifters from the planets in wormhole space. And then at some point, preferably right at the start, if I would have a choice, of course, but at some point what you could then, of course, do is connect those two games. You could connect the Legion Mercs that don't have a capsuleer character, and they could find access points to the actual sleeper facilities in outer space, through some sort of Stargate, whatever you want to call it, and then they could be in on the hunt for capsuleers, or they could get hunted by capsuleers that are actively doing those dungeons. And so you could have a true integration between the Legion shooter that becomes basically a very base game with limited sandbox size at first. Of course, you know, you just have basic bases, basic vehicles that players can build, but you could easily connect that to the EVE Online version, where capsuleers hunt inside sleeper facilities. And I think that that would be a very cool base to work on, then, to basically allow your character, your capsuleer from EVE Online, to become a Legion Merc, and then just set the step to not just raid the facilities, but go out and fight on the planets as well. And then equally, people that are playing Legion, they could also become sort of capsuleers in the lore, and if they pay the monthly subscription, they would gain access to EVE Online, be able to switch into EVE Online as well, and get started in the bigger sandbox that is the whole of EVE Online. And then after that, after you've got that basis, which I think could be very successful, you would basically have a Dust version in wormhole space with maybe some added cool PvE elements as well, that is manageable in size, where, well, you would have a bit more of a lobby shooter there at first, of course, with limited sandbox elements. On the EVE Online front, you would have a bit of a survival shooter game as well. So you would have your first steps into walking in stations there. And after that, you have a good basis to expand to the Legion project that we would all like to see, where these Legion mercs would actually be able to go out, not just in wormhole space, but also in cave space, start conquering planets there, start developing them, make bigger forts, industrial capabilities, new vehicles, possibly, you know, ships that could go from the Legion universe to the EVE universe. You know, after that, of course, we're talking a much longer timeline, and so bigger dreams are definitely possible at that point. But I think that something like that is definitely possible, because just straight up developing the ultimate sandbox shooter that we would all love Project Legion to become, I think is going to be a very tall order. And I think CCP might be looking at the possibility of creating a smaller but fun base experience and then build on that. If we look, of course, at the current development cycle of EVE Online and their other games. Anyways, that would be the alternative roadmap that I thought about when I heard about Dust 514 actually closing their doors, and the fact that CCP is developing a shooter for PC as well. I think something like that would, of course, be extremely cool. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but I'm definitely looking forward more and more to FanFest and to Citadel, and to see what CCP actually has planned for the EVE Online universe. Anyways, that was my rambling for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.